Elon Musk publicly calls out Jennifer Lopez, saying she sat on the Diddy allegations for years and never warned anyone. This as rumors swirl that J-Lo could have been present at the time Diddy was raping a 13-year-old girl. It's just another twist and turn in the sordid case of P. Diddy and the celebrities that could be taken down with him. I'm Gillespie, and this is Law&Crime News. Shots fired at Diddy's ex-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez on one of the most popular podcasts in the world. Just this week, Elon Musk appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience, a long-form podcast that boasts more than 2,000 episodes and more than 18 million subscribers. So the topics of discussion on the show run the gamut, but politics and pop culture do come up often. Those two topics combined are what led us here and the headlines Elon Musk is now making. The podcast came out on Monday of this week ahead of the election. Joe Rogan and Elon Musk were discussing the topic of celebrity endorsements, and Musk himself brought up Jennifer Lopez. We don't have the rights to the podcast audio or video, so this dramatic reading will have to do. Elon Musk said, quote, "It's like J-Lo was like his ex-girlfriend, and it's like now she's deciding, like, warning people against Trump." I'm like, well, wait a second, so how many people did she warn against Diddy? Oh, 0. Okay. Musk is clearly referring to J-Lo's very public relationship with Diddy that lasted from 1999 to 2001. J-Lo took Diddy as her date to the Grammys the night she wore that famous green dress, the one that broke the internet and led to the creation of Google Images. That may be J-Lo's most famous picture from that era, but her mugshot may be a close second. She was arrested alongside Diddy in 1999 after a nightclub shooting near Times Square. No one was killed, but there were injuries. After the shooting, J-Lo and Diddy apparently ran off from the scene, leading to this mugshot when police finally caught up with them. J-Lo's charges were eventually dropped, but the charges stuck for Diddy and the rapper Shine. Some witnesses say they believe Diddy was responsible for the shooting, but it was Shine who faced the more severe charges: 3 counts of attempted murder and criminal possession of a weapon. Both men went to trial with differing outcomes. Diddy was acquitted, but Shine was not. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He was later released in 2009 and deported back to his home country of Belize. Okay, I know you're multitasking when you're watching our videos, and if you're out and about running errands, listen up. I have to tell you about the free app Upside that gets you cash back on daily essentials. It's something I use every time I pump my gas because it's so easy and it's free, so why not? All you have to do is get the Upside app and claim an offer for whatever you're buying. So you pay as usual and then just follow the steps on the app to get paid. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on your screen and use our promo code LCNews to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. So all this happened right at the turn of this century, but the 99 nightclub shooting made headlines again this year when it was specifically mentioned in a lawsuit against Diddy. This was the civil suit filed by Diddy's former producer, Rodney Jones, who's known professionally as Lil Rod. His lawsuit reads in part, quote, "Mr. Combs shared that he was responsible for the shooting in the nightclub in New York City with rapper Shine. Mr. Combs' girlfriend at the time, Jennifer Lopez, aka J-Lo, carried the gun into the club for him and passed him the gun after he got into an altercation with another individual." The strange part about Lil Rod's accusation, the one that J-Lo carried this illegal weapon for Diddy, was that it wasn't the first time we heard that. Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, known publicly as the singer Cassie, filed a civil suit against Diddy just 3 months before Lil Rod. She too alleged Diddy forced her to carry an illegal firearm as a way to maintain power and control over her. And those accusations against Diddy are just one small portion of what's mentioned in more than a dozen civil lawsuits. That's accusations like gun trafficking, drug trafficking, and sex trafficking, all at the hands of Diddy, who allegedly used a sickening pattern to carry out this abuse. By now, you've all heard this, that Diddy would allegedly drug his victims, sexually assault them, or force them to have sex with prostitutes and then record it. These sessions were referred to as freak-offs. They're a common theme across the many civil suits against Diddy, including one filed just last month. This may be one of the most shocking allegations yet, as the victim claims she was just 13 years old when Diddy raped her. She says it happened in September 2000 after MTV's Video Music Awards. She allegedly met up with one of Diddy's limo drivers outside, who told her, quote, Combs liked younger girls and said she'll fit what Diddy was looking for, not allowing her into the awards, but inviting her to an after party. So the driver told Jane Doe to come back around 9:30 or 10 that night, and at that point, he drove her to a large white house behind a gated fence. Jane Doe entered to find multiple celebrities that she recognized. We're now getting reports that some of these celebs were the likes of Eminem, Dr. Dre, Jay-Z, and even the magician David Blaine. Also inside the party, Jane Doe heard loud music and saw waitstaff carrying drinks. There was also a lot of drug use, including marijuana and cocaine. Once inside, two men asked plaintiff to sign a non-disclosure agreement, informing her that she could not discuss what happened at the party. She gave them her name and signed the form, but did not receive a copy. Eventually, Jane Doe accepted a drink that was reddish-yellow mixture, tasting of orange juice, cranberry juice, and something bitter. Jane Doe believes Diddy or his associates slipped something into her drink. After this, Jane Doe says she started feeling woozy and needed to lie down. She went into what she thought was an empty room and didn't lock the door. This next part is a direct quote from her lawsuit, and it's pretty disturbing. Quote, soon after, Combs, along with a male and female celebrity, entered the room. Combs aggressively approached plaintiff with a crazed look in his eyes, grabbed her and said, you are ready to party. As Jane Doe recalls, Diddy threw her toward a male celebrity, listed only as Celebrity A, who took off her clothes. After that, she says Celebrity A raped her, while Diddy and a female celebrity, referred to as Celebrity B, watched along. This as rumors swirl that J-Lo could have been present at the time Diddy was sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl. Later, Diddy tried to force Jane Doe to perform oral sex on him, but she resisted and hit him in the neck. At that point, he stopped. There are now rumblings that Celebrity B in this story is actually Jennifer Lopez. We can't confirm this at all, and J-Lo herself hasn't made any comments about it. But if we're trusting Jane Doe, who alleges this incident happened in September 2000, the timeline could fit. J-Lo and Diddy were still together at that point, so it's possible Celebrity B is in fact Jenny from the block. So now back to Joe Rogan and Elon Musk. Musk alleges that J-Lo knew about this abuse and didn't warn anyone. And keep in mind, this was all before the election, when J-Lo publicly spoke out against Donald Trump. Musk says, quote, I mean, like, if she's going to be warning people, why does she never warn anyone about Diddy? Here's where Joe Rogan pipes in, saying, quote, the whole thing is so strange to watch play out. It seems like the Diddy thing was like an Epstein-type compromise deal. Those are not the first parallels drawn between Diddy and Jeffrey Epstein, who was federally charged with sex trafficking of minors and conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors. For his part, Diddy faces federal charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Diddy is being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, and while Epstein was not housed there, his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell was. So for now, Diddy doesn't face any child sexual assault charges, but those could be coming down the pipeline as more allegations emerge. What does all this mean for J-Lo, though? If she really did witness the sexual assault of this 13-year-old girl, was she compelled to report it? Let's break it all down with trial attorney Joe Richardson. Joe, let's begin with the reason why we're here. We're talking about Jennifer Lopez. So far, we have not heard anything about her. I mean, there have been rumblings about Diddy for about a year now. Heard or nothing from her then. Then his arrest, we still haven't heard anything from her. And now more allegations coming out, all this. Why do you think Jennifer Lopez is staying quiet?
Well, there's a couple of things. There's probably a loyalty component. They're not together now, but they were together all of those years ago. She wouldn't be saying those things then, as most people, frankly, wouldn't. And now you don't want to be considered close to him either, because she's not with them. So why say something in support, particularly if, there's that old adage, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Or you understand that this is not the time to say a good thing that detracts from the multitude of issues which are repetitive and redundant and are piling on one on top of the other. There's a silent chorus at this point. Who's going to actually come in and say, what is she going to say? That he didn't do it? He's innocent until he's proven guilty, etc. But it's probably an issue she doesn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
You touched on their relationship, which was a while ago, the late 90s into early 2000s. She's moved on from that, obviously, but is kind of being drugged back into the headlines along with Diddy because of these allegations. And actually, some civil suits mention Jennifer Lopez and allege that she participated in illegal activity. So, for instance, that she carried an illegal firearm in the 1999 shooting, and now allegations that she may have witnessed some of this rape and all of that. So, if we start just with the logistics, what about the statute of limitations if these things happened decades ago?
Well, to the extent that the defendant is Puffy as a rapist or a sexual assaulter, the statute of limitations has been extended. As to other causes of action related to that, potentially, we don't think that there's an extension of the statute of limitations, right? And then the other part is she's not the one they want. Now, she might be listed because she was supposedly there. We all remember that whole situation with the gun and Shine will say, I've forgiven him, but he totally threw me under the bus. He ended up doing 10 years hard time and getting deported. So, as it pertains to her being a defendant, that window's probably closed unless they're saying that she's a sexual assaulter herself, and nobody's saying that. As it pertains to her maybe witnessing something, maybe seeing something, there's a question as to whether or not pressure could be brought to bear on her, and that's really an open question right now.
Now, one of the allegations that's pretty severe is just coming out. It's from the early 2000s, but it is that Jennifer Lopez may have witnessed P. Diddy sexually assaulting a 13-year-old. So, obviously, very severe. We've got sexual assault and then a child on top of that. So, let's say that that did happen, that Jennifer Lopez did witness that. Is she compelled to report it?
There would be an argument that one would need to report something that they witnessed like that. And there's also an argument related to the notion that if she's there, somehow, maybe on some level, she helped create the peril or something. Creation of peril absolutely brings a responsibility. But I will say it's not a good thing if she witnessed a crime under those circumstances and didn't say anything about it. Is she a mandatory reporter under the law? No, not necessarily. And ignorance is bliss. That might not be the only thing, and we're not necessarily talking about sexual assault that she witnessed Puffy being a part of that she didn't say anything about. So the question is it just the two of them there and that's it? They're not going to tell them themselves. Who else knows? And why does that who else know? And so is that who else somebody that was already that was there as well? The question becomes whether you can use what you think she might know and what corroborates that to put pressure on her to make your case better against Puffy. It doesn't look like anybody wants anybody, the prosecutor wants anybody other than Puffy, because if they did, they would be indicted co-conspirators as opposed to unindicted co-conspirators. This case, they use a conspiracy RICO type of situation, but there's no other defendants. That means that they want Puffy. So to the extent that they would use J-Lo, to the extent that they would use Usher, to the extent they would use anyone, it would just be to strengthen their case against Puffy because it doesn't look like they want a case against anybody else.
So, going toward the prosecution's case, obviously there was a lot of investigation going into this. And one of the main accusers is Cassie, Diddy's ex. We can't confirm this completely, but we're pretty positive she is the one who's listed in the indictment and has spoken with federal investigators. So, we know that that's happening there. What about Jennifer Lopez? Could she be speaking with the feds?
Well, she's not publicly saying so if she is, right? A lot of people are probably thinking, if I'm in this particular box, I may have seen something. Do they know whether or not I've seen something? They're talking to their lawyers. They're trying to tamp things down and say, wait, should we call them before they call us? And could this cost me my career, even if not my freedom? So a lot of people are thinking those types of things. And to the extent that any discussions like that are going on, we wouldn't really know unless it came time for any of those people to be part of a prosecution. If they're part of a prosecution, the prosecutor is going to know what it is that they're supposed to be saying.
So let's talk about that. Let's say Jennifer Lopez is part of the prosecution. You mentioned their relationship. Obviously, it was strong for some time. They were together for more than a year. So she may have some sort of loyalty toward him. But if we're talking about criminal charges, federal charges, she may want to testify for the prosecution. Do you think it's possible that they would call her to the stand?
I think it's possible if they need it. I am a big believer that I think you prosecute one star at a time, because you've got people with resources, you've got people that sometimes have public support. I don't know that. I think that maybe Puffy has fallen out of public favor. I don't know that Jennifer Lopez has, even though that last concert tour didn't do so good. She's not considered a rapist, right? Or a sexual assaulter. And even the Shine situation is 15, 20 years ago. And so I don't necessarily know that they want to bite anything off of that apple. However, if they need her testimony and they have a discussion with her about that testimony, and she is somehow compelled to bring that testimony and be part of that, then she would do what she had to do. Puffy doesn't necessarily have to like it. She doesn't want to do that. But if they're squeezing her that way, they're squeezing somebody. But my sense is they're squeezing somebody lower on the totem pole.
I think one of the reasons that everyone across America is so interested in this case is because it's a major fall from grace for someone who is so beloved, P. Diddy. But on top of that, we have a lot of other A-list celebrities who were connected to his universe. I mean, Jennifer Lopez, we have Ashton Kutcher, Mary J. Blige. The list goes on and on and on. And some of the attorneys who are filing civil suit against Diddy have said, hey, we're going to name drop some pretty major celebrities. So, if and when that does happen down the line, apparently there are dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of accusers. Do you think that these celebrities are already contacting their attorneys and saying, "Hey, you know what? Be prepared for this"? What do you think that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they're probably looking at potential exposure. Was I somebody at a party? Was I somebody doing something at a party? Was I somebody participating in something that actually toes the line to potentially being illegal, to potentially being in this trafficking category? So I think a good part of it has to do, they're certainly consulting with their attorneys, and they're consulting with their publicists, because they want to make sure that they navigate these things with their career intact. And what does that look like? So, Puffy was the party guy. He put on a party like no other. I mean, Michael Jackson showed up at one of his parties. Puffy didn't even know he was coming, and he goes, and next thing you know, he's out there dancing with Beyonce. So it's a whole different thing. His parties and his things touched everybody on some level. And so, how do you, if you were in the mix that way, do you have clean hands because you always left before a certain time, before things got crazy? Do you feel like you could explain something if you got out in front of it? Really depends on what category they're in. They're all consulting with their attorneys because nobody wants to get named, nobody wants to get brought into court, and nobody wants to have a buzzsaw hit them that has the potential to affect their career. So they're having those discussions, looking both ways before they cross the street. I don't necessarily see criminal liability on anyone because they really seem to want Puff Daddy, and that's where they're going. But everybody's taking a look at it for sure.
As you pointed out, there are a lot of people connected to P. Diddy, majorly on the party scene for decades of time. So we have a lot of these high profile celebrity names who may have seen something, may have partook in something, who knows what it is. But I'm wondering why we didn't hear about this sooner. I mean, we can kind of trace this all back to Kathy Ventura, who a year ago now, in November of last year, filed civil suit and kind of broke the floodgates. That's when we, the public, learned about P. Diddy. But if there are so many other celebrities who may have seen something over the years, why have we not heard it before?
His parties are legendary. And then the next piece is that Hollywood things, movie star things, music artist things happening late at night. Well, people talk about that all the time. You put the two together, and now you've got Puffy putting on some crazy parties that involve some crazy stuff. And so it was under the rug, but there was no reason for it to come out. Now, there's word about him having people sign NDAs. I guess that's possible. I hadn't confirmed that necessarily. So that could be part of it. But, there's certainly offhanded conversation about people knowing what goes on when they go there. But once he let the Cassie thing out of the bag, by not settling the case before it saw the light of day. The idea that he was willing to settle that case even after the lawsuit came out meant that there was a lot of fire behind that smoke. So he really needed to make sure that didn't happen. If it doesn't prevent it, it certainly buys him some time. And that was the biggest mistake he could have made, because now it's out in the open, and the criminal side, the U.S. attorney actually had a template and a roadmap. Here are the things that happen. Oh, well, I'm just going to start calling people on the phone, putting my case together, and the pressure that I create would bring me the witnesses to fill in the holes that I need.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because we've been talking about Diddy for a year now, and this is a question I just can't seem to wrap my brain around. P. Diddy settled with Cassie one day after she filed, but his team obviously knew that she was bringing this lawsuit and it was going to be made public. So why did he wait for her to file it and then settle, rather than settling before it was ever filed and made public, leading to these criminal charges?
No good reason, right? Somehow he really thought that he was in her head enough where she wouldn't bring the lawsuit. Anytime you will settle with someone in 24 hours with the cat out of the bag, at least in terms of the allegations, that means you should have never let it see the light of day. Now, I'm not patting him on the back and saying, well, you should have done this and then that would have been great. You still have people that are damaged, that are grieved, that were beat on, that potentially were sexually trafficked. I'm not trying to make him look like a good guy. You start in the middle of a story where you've done all of this damage to people that affects them for life. But if you keep it from coming out, then good for you. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if his goal was to limit potential criminal liability, he would never have let this see the light of day. So there's no good reason why he did what he did, because he settled it within 24 hours. I would be willing to bet his attorneys probably told him that he ought to, and he didn't want to. And so this is kind of a little bit of a come down for him in terms of really understanding that he's in a different place. He may have felt lawless over these years. There's other things that have maybe been said and done that he hasn't had to pay a price for, at least in terms of criminal liability or public perception. But now all of this is coming down, and maybe it could have been avoided or delayed by him settling that case, gotten an NDA before, confidentiality agreement before he did it. So it's something that I'll never understand.
Cassie's lawsuit is invaluable to all of this and really opened our eyes to what was happening. And she mentioned she was only 19 years old when she started this tumultuous relationship with Diddy. So that's a teenager, legally an adult, but still a teenager. But now we're hearing word that he may have sexually assaulted children as young as 13, one report about 9, really young children. However, we don't have federal charges about child sex crimes. Do you think that's something that could be coming down the pipeline?
I don't know, given the passage of time. With your conspiracy case, with your RICO case, RICO cases were created in order to get mobsters, these guys that you could never convict. You could take a bunch of things that you knew happened, may have been past time in terms of statute of limitations, may have been things that you couldn't prove by themselves to make the centerpiece of a case, but put them in together, mix them all up. Now you got a conspiracy. So a lot of the things that may be alleged might be things that are past time to prosecute for, right? And so, but with the RICO Act, it's a catch-all. And so I don't necessarily expect separate charges other than using the things that have occurred as allegations that strengthen the conspiracy.
All this remains to be seen. I know that all eyes are on Diddy now and leading toward his future trial set for May of next year. So we're going to keep an eye on it. Joe, thank you so much for coming on and breaking this all down for us.
You're more than welcome. Thanks for having us.
For his part, Diddy has pleaded not guilty to all the federal charges. His attorney released a statement reading in part, quote, "Sean Diddy Combs is a music icon, self-made entrepreneur, loving family man, and proven philanthropist who has spent the last 30 years building an empire, adoring his children and working to uplift the Black community. He is an imperfect person, but is not criminal. To his credit, Mr. Combs has been nothing but cooperative with the investigation. Please reserve your judgment until you have all the facts. These are the acts of an innocent man with nothing to hide, and he looks forward to clearing his name in court." For now, a federal trial date for Diddy is set for May 5th of next year. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.